Excellent. And we're live. So welcome everybody today. It's a Blockchain for Europe Association, another day with wonderful women leaders in this blockchain space. We have some of the top companies, women representing some of the top companies in the blockchain space today with us. They will be sharing their stories, how they joined the industry, what's interesting in that for them, what they're working on. We'll be talking about partnerships, policy, and advocacy. So let me start by introducing Susan Friedman, who is representing Ripple, and she's also the vice chair of the association. Susan, what brought you here?
Thanks so much, Maria. You're talking about to blockchain generally.
Yeah, right? Blockchain. Yeah. What brought you to blockchain? Why did you join Ripple? When and what you're working on?
Absolutely. I joined the company in 2019, and before that, I was working at the Department of the Treasury. And as part of that, while I was there, someone gave a presentation in one of our offices on this is what blockchain is, this is what Bitcoin is, this is what crypto is, which was pretty. It was exciting. It was new concepts. It was a new tech. And when I was ready to leave government, it was clearly a place where there was a chance to really impact, to make an impact both at the company, which Ripple is focused on cross-border payments, and I believe in the mission, but it was also a chance to really shape the policy in a way that you don't often see as a lawyer. So to get into the regulatory space and to help shape the policy in a positive way. So it was just I knew that it would be an exciting field to work in. And when the opportunity presented itself at Ripple, it was a no-brainer from my perspective.
So you're a lawyer with your background. You don't have a technical degree.
No technical degree at all. So although I think working in this space, you can't help but sort of quickly get up to speed on, by necessity, the different technologies at play. But the idea that, crypto, in our world, just seeing what crypto can do in terms of facilitating cross-border remittances and the way that you can get money to where you need it to go faster, cheaper, more reliably than instant systems. I mean, the fact that people can get more of the money that they're supposed to get to use it for the things that they need it to use for food and rent and all of the necessities, I think, was really exciting. And that is just one small sliver of the blockchain and crypto space. The applications are endless, as I know some of my colleagues are going to speak to.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. How about Lynn? How about you? You're coming from Binance. That's a really well-known name.
Well, certainly in the cryptocurrency world, it is. And we have a lot of other people who do the publicity for that very well, like CZ, our CEO. But I learned about blockchain and DLT when I was transferred to Gibraltar and went to the first Gibraltar blockchain conference. And when the government there launched their framework, that's how I became familiar with it. I was asked to move to San Francisco for family reasons. I went there and helped set up a blockchain company in environmental data. So got away from banking for a little bit. And while I was in San Francisco, I attended 6 different conferences. And it was very fashionable in 2018 and 19 to go to conferences and hotels in San Francisco and talk about blockchain and artificial intelligence. So I did a lot of that, a lot of local meetups, and that was how I climbed my learning curve, basically. And then after a year setting that company up, I was asked to come, I was coming back to London to kind of go back into the traditional financial and banking world. And I was asked to have a cup of coffee with someone who was setting up a digital custodian. So I ended up doing the same job for him, setting up his digital custodian in Ireland and looking at also all of the rules in Wyoming and some of the new jurisdictions in the US. So that gave me a lot of regulatory exposure to the new landscape in the US and the rules there. And then finally, I was asked with another colleague who was joining Binance at the same time, he asked me to come and do regulatory work for them. So really, it's been my background in finance and regulation, and that skill set that's kind of carried me into working for a large cryptocurrency company that is very decentralized. So I think the first, early part of my career was in a centralized big bank environment. And so I've shifted into this decentralized remote working, let's all make sure our laptops are great kind of environment. And learned about crypto and using your mobile wallets, and everything's going pretty rapidly at a fintech kind of speed. So it's
Well,
a different,
absolutely.
yeah,
It's a very super fast world, especially I think in 2021 it just seems like it just went exponential in every possible way. How about you, Claire? You also have a very interesting background and how you got into this space.
Yeah. Hi there. Yeah, so my name's Claire Comby. I'm head of risk and compliance at Billon, and Billon is a blockchain company offering regulated digital cash, asset and data tokenization, and secure document management solutions. So again, varied, it really demonstrates kind of the versatility, I think, of the technology. Before I joined Billon 3 years ago, I spent almost 15 years working in a variety of compliance and business management roles. I've worked at Lehman Brothers, RBS and Coots, so more your kind of traditional large corporate banking kind of environments. I then took a 6-year break, essentially, to retrain and focus on something completely different. I delivered classes to preschoolers, so 1 to 5 year olds, focusing on speech and language skills in preparation for school. So I ran my own business for that time. And then I decided that actually I wanted to get back into finance. I was quite conscious that I hadn't really paid a huge amount of attention to what was going on in the industry, or or what kind of opportunities might be available for me, particularly given that I had had the 6-year break. I was then introduced to Billon, and Billon had just secured their UK e-money license, and they were looking for somebody to take over their MLRO and risk management responsibilities. So I knew it was something that I had previous experience in, but I have to admit I hadn't heard of Billon, and I didn't know what blockchain was. I can honestly say I've never researched so much for an interview in my life. Literally gone from kind of knowledge base of 0 to being able to talk about the basics of blockchain and risk management, etc., to give myself the best possible chance of securing the role. But what I found really refreshing was, as soon as I started talking to the leadership team at Billon, I realised how many transferable skills I had, not only from working in risk management in the more traditional banking environment, but also from running my own business. And I started to see the value that I could add to a business like Billon. So I knew, I really wanted the job, I really wanted to be part of it, and thankfully I was successful in securing the role. The reality is that I've been on a very steep learning curve. I had to get up to speed, obviously, in terms of the regulatory environment. I'd never worked for a fintech startup company before, so that was a new experience for me. But actually what I found really interesting is learning about how versatile the technology is and the opportunities that then generates. It's a really exciting environment to work in. No 2 days are the same. And I guess that the key message here is that I don't need to be a techie to do the role. I need to manage risk, I need to understand the processes, the customer journey, the outcomes, and I need to manage that risk. That's what I need to be an effective risk manager. So any nerves that I had in terms of not having that technology exposure and experience before actually didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fantastic. That's really important to know, because I think there is a lot of misconception that you need to be a programmer to really, be able to join the industry, and you need to know everything before you can start. Yeah. I think, one of the key observations is, or has been so far, that you can start really from scratch. You can start at any age, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, really. It's anybody who's willing to learn will be able to thrive here, learn quickly and apply themselves.
Yeah.
So thank you. And we also have Christine. She's actually located. So you're Claire, you're here in London. Christine is in Germany.
Yes, in Berlin. I moved to Berlin a few years ago because of blockchain, but I'll go back a little further and kind of trace my path here. I graduated university back in 1991, so way before smartphones and email, and I majored in English, which maybe wasn't so wise back in the time of a recession, but what I found was I was really good about translating technical concepts to different audiences, whether that's partners, investors, press, and so that actual skill worked well for me in tech. This was beginning of dot-com boom. There were magazines like Fast Company and Industry Standard that were talking all about startups, and I was fascinated by that. And I was going to an early version of meetups to learn about the tech, meet startups, see what it was like to work there. I ended up meeting a couple founders and joining their company in Cambridge, Mass. And then a couple months later, we were bought by the New York Times company. So really shifted my job from a software startup into digital media, and found that, again, the skill of being able to write simply and clearly about tech was important, but also I liked digging into website operations. I moved more into a product role, went to the Wall Street Journal, worked on their product side. But along the way, picking up, just because I had to pitch and write and talk to reporters, I needed to learn what the technology did. I had to learn usability. And so I was able to transfer those skills into my own consulting firm. And then a couple of years ago, I started thinking, what do I want long-term? What do I want to be able to focus on for the next 10 to 20 years? I wanted to make a bet on a technology that I could stick with and learn kind of endlessly. So I was looking heavily into AI, big data, and blockchain. And I chose blockchain. Sorry, Maria, but I saw that as the kind of long-term growth for me, variety. I think there's something for everyone in blockchain. You know, more and more we'll see applications across anything that you could be interested in. So right now I'm on my third blockchain company. I just finished our third token sale. So I've seen kind of the highs and lows, and like some of the others have spoken about, I have never written a line of code. I do think we need more women developers, more women cryptographers in the business, but I think that's kind of more upstream. Those are things that we need to work on with organizations like Women Who Code, Girls Who Code. But for folks who are in their careers or looking for a new career, I'm just amazed at the growth in blockchain, and increasingly more women. We of course need more diversity. Like any kind of more traditional industry, it's really important to have diversity of skill sets, of gender, of every type of diversity, because it's really core to success of blockchain. But what I also find fascinating is, again, transferable skills, that the more blockchain companies are maturing and the more that corporates are adopting blockchain, it's really critical to have those core, you know, the accounting skills, the legal skills, business development. I do business development now for Kill Protocol, which is an identity blockchain protocol. And it's, for someone who might think I'm too late to blockchain, it's too difficult to learn, you can bring those skills and really contribute in a meaningful way to both a startup or a corporate. And more, the smarter blockchain companies are realizing that they need to hire women. So there's a lot of opportunity.
No, absolutely. Very much agree with you. We also have Anka. She's also another European country. What's your story? What's your journey, Anka?
Thank you, Maria. Yes, I'm connecting today from Bucharest, Romania. My journey started, I guess, way before I actually went into the blockchain space in terms of alignment there. I spent 8 years at the World Bank working in international development with a very clear focus for most of those years on financial inclusion and digital finance. And I went into that space without necessarily having a financial background. My studies were more around economics, international development, and policy. And I spent a little bit of time at the World Bank figuring out what's the area of economic development that I was really passionate about. And so through that focus on digital finance, inevitably, you get exposed to a lot of new technologies, and understand that there's a lot of hype behind some technologies. It's not always a lot of impactful results. But after a while, the more you learn about the cutting edge technologies, the the more you realize that in an institution as big as the World Bank that has to be so conservative in some of the approaches it takes, you just can't be pushing the envelope in testing and piloting, and for good reasons. I understood why that wasn't happening as fast as I would have wanted it to, but it sort of opened this window of opportunity to me, wondering, well, great, if I want to achieve the same goals, where else can I do it? And it just so happened that, the C Labs, the company that launched the mainnet of the Cell platform, was an idea being incubated at that time. And so it's interesting to me that the way that I actually ended up working in blockchain was through one of the first engineers at C Labs, who was a young woman, MIT grad, who had done an internship at the World Bank. And so by the time that C Labs was starting to figure out, what we need to start hiring people, she reached out. And so my road to blockchain is through female connections who've been in the space or just, testing the space. And I think I still think of myself very much as a financial inclusion practitioner, because what attracts me to blockchain is, yes, the technology is cool, and it gets cooler every day, but mostly having identified some of the blockers to reaching financial inclusion, some of the friction points that we were seeing both in terms of policy and implementation, and having a bit of a aha moment. There's a lot of these friction points that can be addressed through the use of the blockchain technology. And so it was a very good pitch of, I want to do this. If it doesn't work, at least I'll know I've learned a lot from it. And I will say this, like everyone else on the call today, no technical skills. The only coding that I've done was sort of data analysis and econometrics projects when I was working with the research group at the World Bank. But one of the things that I love about the industry is a sense of humility around the people, because this is so new. We are all learning together. There's no, I distrust of anyone who says they're a blockchain expert, because things are progressing so fast all the time. And some of the most enlightening and even bonding experiences have been sort of in the meeting room with the engineering team, hearing them go through how do we solve a certain issue, and then being able to stop them and say, I don't understand. I need you to go back and explain to me why this is an issue and what are the pathways. I'm not going to answer your question, but I want to understand why we're doing things a certain way. And having everyone be very open to that, because everyone is learning together. And I think that's that would be my, the main justifier of why women should come into the industry and stay. Everyone is learning alongside each other. And there's such an openness to learn together.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. I also like your comment that there are no experts. Some people do like to label themselves as experts, but I think having been here for 3 years, we can quickly identify who the experts are. And it's usually the people that are really the most humble and helping each other. Those are the experts and not the ones that claim to be. So just a little bit about my background. So I joined this interesting space 3 years ago. And when Christine, at least as you mentioned, you were deciding which of these new emerging or transformational technologies to choose, I actually wanted to combine. I was looking at AI, and I started hearing about this blockchain and Bitcoin and this magical, internet money and all that. So I was like becoming really curious, and it just wasn't going away. So I thought that, it would be really cool if I could work for a company that is looking at both of these technologies and trying to combine, them in some interesting use cases. And luckily enough, here where I'm living at the moment, Cambridge, UK, there is a company, and I joined the company called Fetch AI. I'm working in the business development, so as a director of business development, so speaking with academics, industry leaders, companies, and with regulators and policymakers, which is incredibly important as well. And yeah, and I find it super fascinating. You know, we're developing these technologies that will be serving us, you know, in the future going forward. You know, looking at Fetch is looking at things like machine-to-machine economy. How do you make machines autonomous? So they can trade with each other and communicate with each other, and these transactions can then be stored on a blockchain for trustworthiness and verifiability, and so really cool use cases that are, you know, just springing to life. And I would really encourage everybody else who is interested in these technologies to not necessarily look at them separately, but there are also ways to how you can combine these. And definitely, you know, I also don't have much of a technical background. I mean, I used to work at Oracle. We were doing deployment of software solutions. So I have had that background, but not deeply technical. So I'm not coding. I can do basic stuff. But what is important is I think, Christine, you mentioned that, you know, to translate the concepts and help the technical people to actually understand the use cases that are being, you know, developed or that are needed by the customers, by the clients, and really, you know, make that connection between technology and the real world. And I think that blockchain is really trying to do that and really bring these new economic use cases and new possibilities to us. So we are also here, all of us, as part of Blockchain for Europe Association, which is this really cool association that has brought us together in our quest to discuss or help to understand this technology also to policymakers and regulators. We go around Europe, we speak with people in Brussels, in the Commission, in the European Parliament, and really try to have this dialogue. Susan, maybe you can tell a little bit about your experience, or why do you think this is important, and what are some of the things that we have been looking at?
No, absolutely. I mean, and I know that my colleagues who have all been heavily engaged in this as well will have thoughts as well. But I should mention that I sit in Washington, D.C. and lead policy. But our experience in DC is much the same as we're finding in Europe, which is that people are coming at this topic from all different levels in terms of their base knowledge. And in order to, as Europe considers MiCA, which is the Markets and Crypto Asset Regulation, which it will set up a framework to regulate crypto and stable coins. In order to get the best articulation of that framework, it's important that people understand what it is that they are regulating and there are different nuances and different aspects. And a lot of what we do, I think, is to engage in that education to be a resource. And to be clear, many of the policymakers, I think, have spent time looking at this and understanding it. But to bring that perspective from each of our companies, and it's amazing when we talk to policymakers, each representative is coming at it from a slightly different angle and looking at it from the viewpoint of what it is that they're working on. And together, I think we're able to enrich the knowledge of the people, the policymakers that we're engaging with as they consider these regulations. It makes for ultimately, and in the US as well, a better framework, one that realistically can take on the challenges of the tech and the products that they're trying to regulate to protect both industry and consumers.
Lynn, what are your thoughts, or what's your experience here? You are also based here in the UK, so you also see how things are, you know, developing here. You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously here in the UK, we've had Brexit has now passed. So they have an independent regulatory framework, and they are not necessarily tied to MiCA. So these two frameworks are going to be developing independently. And currently the FCA in the UK has a crypto asset service provider regulatory regime where they are in the process of evaluating applications for crypto asset service providers. So that's a money laundering licensing framework, which is also being duplicated in other independent individual jurisdictions throughout Europe. So we have MiCA developing at a time when other countries are setting up their own domestic regulations at the same time. So it's an interesting patchwork quilt landscape, and MiCA is going to be coming in as an overarching framework above it, or in addition to it. So it's a interesting time for companies that are trying to navigate this space. They're asking the question, should I be going and incorporating affiliates and new companies in other jurisdictions, in Europe, in Malta, in Gibraltar, in Switzerland? What should we consider? Because we know MiCA is coming and will have an impact on the entire landscape. So it's a very interesting time, and people are placing their bets. A lot of people are interested, for example, in Ireland. A lot of tech companies have located in Ireland for a number of reasons. So Ireland's in the EU, it's English speaking. So that has a lot of impact on people who are also looking at the UK. So we have to consider all these factors as you're developing your picture and your regulatory recommendations.
Yeah. Thank you. I know, Claire, you're also attending many of the calls, or most of the calls with us, and you've been very vocal about what you guys can contribute, or how you see the developments.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, from Billon's perspective, we hold an e-money license in the UK and in Poland. So I'm looking at this from a EU kind of development perspective, but also from a UK perspective as well. So a large part of my role is to really try and assess the impact of what these two kind of sets of regulations mean for our business. And like you say, within Blockchain for Europe, we've had lots of discussions in terms of the impact of MiCA on kind of DLT firms. Challenges for firms such as Billon, where we're looking at e-money tokens as payment instruments rather than tradable instruments. There's lots of analysis that's been done. And actually, the great thing about Blockchain for Europe is that it's given us a voice to articulate the challenges that we have, to explain what the proposed regulations would mean for firms such as ours, and just to have that open conversation, because like you say, there are obviously a lot of policymakers involved, a lot of specialists, but actually hearing things from the industry side can only go on to enhance their own conversations that they're having, and work towards hopefully kind of a sensible decision-making process before the regulations are finalised. So it's a really interesting debate to be in, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the UK alongside MiCA, and what that means potentially from a market perspective, in terms of one being more attractive than another, from a market kind of perspective.
Yeah, and Anka, what are your thoughts?
I have a lot. I think it's interesting because I remember sort of the period when I was at the World Bank, when a lot of the mobile money regulation were rolling out in Africa or Latin America, and I see a lot of parallels between the questions of the regulators who were asking then about mobile money, about tiered KYC, about AML regulation, with the ones that are being had now around blockchain. And I think it's important to see that parallel and understand that the same impact that mobile money has had on financial inclusion can now be transferred to some of the conversations that we're having around blockchain. And at the same time, and this is where I think a lot of the benefits that being part of Blockchain for Europe come in. Any new industry will have a lot of fly-by-night operations. People will try things, people will try to take advantage of the lack of information and understanding. And so being part of an industry association that brings together sort of legitimate, trustworthy actors in the field to speak with one voice to the regulator, to say, we hear your concerns and we want you to understand ours, we don't want to evade jurisdictions. We don't want to, evade regulation, but rather we want to help you understand, how a few words in writing a regulation can impact a potential use case. And this is how we see it. I think it's immensely helpful. And then there's a lot of conversation about regulation in the US, in the UK, in the EU now. Traditionally, I look at Africa as a region that really looks at how the EU regulation evolves to inspire and draw their own regulation. And I think it's important to be aware. It's similarly, there's other regions of the world that look at the UK or the US. And so I think it's important to understand just how much of an impact MiCA can have, not only in the EU, but just really setting a foundation and an example for a lot of the countries looking to do something similar. And so it's exciting. I think it's just a lot of reading, a lot of meetings, but it's really exciting.
Yeah, we definitely are all interested in having, being in Europe and having Europe lead these developments and really provide the right leadership, like you mentioned, to Africa, but also to explain to others like what is possible in terms of having the proper level of regulation when we understand the need for it, but what we're also trying to say is that it needs to be technology neutral, right? So one, just because you have a decentralized ledger rather than centralized, it doesn't mean that there perhaps needs to be differences in regulations. I don't know. Christine, what are your thoughts?
Well, right now we're a little bit less, well, we're not a DeFi platform per se, but certainly I think it's really interesting for us to watch these great strides being made on the fiscal policy, on the regulatory compliance side, because, like many, we do have a token. We do want to have our developers be able to use our token on a utility basis. So we need to know all of those things to help our business, and also that developers can build their own businesses on our protocol, just like a WordPress or Drupal or other open source. So all of these, all the work you're doing is actually making us build our protocol so other businesses can be layered on that. So it's kind of a step process. And then, we're an identity protocol. We want businesses and individuals to be able to control their identity, which is really your data. And so these are all very interlinked when you think about how, banking and how your information is shared and how you don't have much choice on where that information is going. So I think it's really interesting that the legislation that's getting done now is actually going to impact so many other types of blockchain projects because it's foundational.
Yeah, we have actually questions here from audience. So if anybody in the audience has any questions, let us know. There's one question. It says, what is the best source of information that we should use to look at the regulations from a global perspective, country by country? Anybody would like to contribute to that? We have different people in different countries, different parts of the world. So that's actually really great.
I actually, I'll kick off with this one, but I tried to write an answer in the little nav bar and it wouldn't let me post it. So I apologize for the functionality there. But there are a lot of international law firms, first of all, that have newsletters so that you can contact, major law firms in the US, the UK. They will have those on their websites. The OECD, the EBA, the ECB, the Bank of England, and the EU all have policy documents that you can find, also consultations. They also have universities. I'm sure, Christine, you can mention the one in Germany that's quite well known in Frankfurt. There's a Center for Alternative Finance in Cambridge that also has some academic papers that they are and information they're publishing. So there's a lot there, plus obviously the regulatory websites of each independent national competent authority will have their own language regulations published, and also speeches and other consultations. So that's how I would go about getting the initial information. And last but not least, the Library of Congress has a complete regulatory listing of all the international regulations on crypto assets that you can access through the Library of Congress in Washington.
That's a good to know. Actually, that I wasn't aware of that. So
Yeah.
I don't know, Susan, you probably are aware of that or familiar with these. How do people access that? How do you get? You just like look in and Google it and
Library of Congress website. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
but Susan's probably got lots of recommendations on that as well.
No, Lynn, I think that is the main, a great hub. The one caution is I don't know how frequently it's updated. So I think many of the other sources that Lynn cited are the right places to look at. Unfortunately, there isn't one central repository, although it's a great idea for all the initiatives that are out there.
Oh, absolutely. I wasn't actually aware. So thank you very much. And that's good to know. How is this handled in Poland, Claire? Do you know?
Well, it's difficult. I mean, I think, you know, the sheer list of sources that Lynn just quoted, I think demonstrates how difficult it is to try and keep a hold on all the regulations that are coming out. I mean, obviously, from a Poland perspective, we're focusing on the EU and EU legislation predominantly. But, you know, from our perspective, we do just look country by country. You know, if there's a new market we're interested in, then we research and we resource that particular country. We haven't got a particular kind of methodology or source of information at the moment. But, you know, there's a lot of information out there. And I think even I'm going to perhaps contact Lynn separately and make a note of all these sources. See if I can try and make our lives a bit easier. But yeah, it's certainly not really straightforward, I have to say. And with regulations changing so frequently, it's quite a task, even keeping on top of where, you know, what the changes are and what they mean for you as a business.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to mention that also Blockchain for Europe, we publish regularly timeline for Europe once a month. Also on our Twitter and our website, so follow that, and we will be updating the website very soon, so there will be even more information available. So maybe we could pull all these other resources more easily. I think that'd be really good. So yeah, there's a lot going on. And I think what's really also important is to keep up with what's going on, because blockchain, it just feels like it's spinning, the whole world is spinning super fast, especially really, like I said, at least for me, it feels like since 2021. So I think it's very exciting as well. This new DeFi space, well, no, it's not new, but there seems to be much more interest in that and many more use cases. And I think those are quite challenging to understand, I would say, even for people within the blockchain space. I don't know if you guys want to discuss that a little bit as well, what kind of projects or what kind of challenges there are. Anka, I'm just randomly picking if somebody wants to volunteer. I know Lynn has had something to say, so I'll leave it to you.
Sure. I am by far not the DeFi expert in our team. But there is, I mean, agreed, there is a lot going on. I feel that at any moment when we get even an update from what is going on in the Celo ecosystem, I realize how much is going on a regular basis. But I think a lot of the value proposition of blockchain is the you know, eliminating some of the intermediaries, being able to highly customize the service offerings that you offer to your customers, and really being able to channel the funds in ways they need to be channeled. One of the projects that that is part of the Celo ecosystem that I very fond of is called, for example, Impact Market, and what they do is distribute UBI on, so universal basic income on blockchain. I think they've reached, I'm probably going to completely murder the numbers because I haven't looked at it, but only in Brazil, I think it's been something like 350,000 Celo dollars being distributed in low-income communities, and it keeps growing. And that's one example, right? There's a number of others around making sure that the funds so we're looking right now in the financial space at very low interest rates, folks who might want to invest and get some more return on their investment than they would by just saving in a bank account, and then a huge financing gap in the developing world. And so a lot of the DeFi, and again, I look at this through the financial inclusion lens. So I know there's a lot of very cool DeFi that is more gamified. This hasn't been my focus, but rather sort of matching the extra capital and the need for capital in a way that's easy for both sides. Yeah, I think it's, admittedly, it's something that's going to give a lot of financial regulator pause because you're not used to it. It's hard to understand. It's hard to explain or fully understand and assimilate the risks. Right? And that's where folks that look at risk are extremely important in the field. But it's exciting and it clearly answers market needs.
Lynn?
The only thing I would say is that it is coming up with in a lot of the dialogues we're having right now with Robert in our legislative conversations with both the members of the European Parliament, the ministries of finance, and the central bank representatives that are talking with us. Everybody is aware of it. It is on the radar screen. And both the companies that are involved in it, I think, need to engage more because I think it's recognized as a structural issue with some risk attached to it, but everyone admits they don't understand it. So I think we need to focus more in some of our work, our lobbying work going forward to make sure it's appreciated and structurally understood.
Yeah. I fully agree, and then it's one of the things we're planning to do as Blockchain for Europe Association is to continue in our workshops. So we have set up a couple of workshops last year where we basically brought the experts and had an explanatory workshops to people in the regulatory space, explaining what blockchain is. What we're planning to do this year is to extend those workshops and actually focus on specific use cases, looking at healthcare space, looking at supply chain space, but also looking at DeFi, because DeFi is really an area that deserves a lot more attention because it has a lot of attention from within, you know, with what's going on. And it's exponential growth. But as it's been said, you know, it's rather challenging to understand. And so what we want to do is really break down the concepts and make them really much more easily understood. So if anybody who's watching is interested to participate in these workshops, please get in touch through our website, through our social media. There's contact information there, so you can contact us, and we would be happy to help you out. Some other cool things that you guys are working on, I don't know, Christine, Susan, somebody else. What do you find exciting, and how can we, you know, get more people excited about this so they don't think it's just all technical? You know, what are some of the skill sets that people need, women would need to be able to really thrive here? What would you recommend?
I actually wanted to tie those two conversations together in that it is partly on the blockchain projects to do a better job of PR and promoting ourselves and our use cases. And some of us are so early, Kilt isn't launched yet, you know, but there are a lot of projects out there, especially DeFi, which is definitely the hot area of blockchain right now. That, you know, there is no killer app, so to speak, yet for blockchain. There is no email that, you know, folks didn't really understand maybe HTML until there was a website they could use. They didn't understand TCP or whatever the acronym is until there was an email. So until there's a breakthrough, I mean, there's a couple of small projects and people are beginning to understand, but until there's a breakthrough where people really do see, whether it's unbanked, whether it's supply chain, provenance, gaming, there's so many projects going on. And the thing that encourages me is there's a ton of collaboration within the project. So I work within the Polkadot ecosystem. It's a blockchain protocol that has a ton of projects, 300 or more, working and really tightly together. Folks are aware who's doing what, they're collaborating, they're building together, and it's a huge growth area right now. And that's going to be what it takes. And then it's going to be up to all of us to really, going back to what I said before about talking about your tech in a really straightforward way and helping people understand what it is blockchain can be used for, how it can make their personal and professional life better, and then also how they can get involved, whether that's learning about cryptocurrency, learning about how they can gain some financial independence from crypto and from staking, or even beginning another career. But I do think in the next 10 years, it's going to be, as they say, this is the early 90s of the internet days, and there's just so much growth, but we're being hampered by the fact that it's so complicated and there is no breakout use case yet.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, and it's a slightly different tact and builds on themes that we opened the conversation with, is my background is not in tech. I was a litigator for the first 6 to 10 years of my career, and I just think that speaking to the legal nerds out there, I think that people shouldn't count themselves out from this industry just because their background may not align perfectly with the concepts discussed. If you enjoy policy, if you think analytically, if you are a good writer, all of those skills, and I think this builds upon themes that Christine and Claire highlighted, they can be transferred easily to blockchain and crypto. And it's a question of, does being in a field where you can actually help establish the policy that governs it excite you? And if that threshold question is answered, there's no reason why you couldn't apply your skill set to this area, even if you don't come from the substantive background. And I think that's true of professionals. You tend to get set in what your subject area is, and I think it's just a matter of thinking a little bit more creatively and out of the box.
Yeah, and I think perhaps just to add to that, I mean, something that we're working on at Billon at the moment is really how to leverage the e-money licenses that we hold in the UK and within the EU. Now, the fact that we have these e-money capabilities, that we can expand our network through agents, is great. But actually, we're a blockchain company, so we have the added benefit of being able to offer simplified processes, cost savings. And, this is exciting. I'm in a risk and compliance role, no technical experience or knowledge as such, but I'm working on kind of a new proposition that risk and compliance is a core part of, because, of course, appointing agents is very heavily kind of risk management oriented. But we've got the added benefit of blockchain. So we're operating within a really exciting environment, but we're offering something that should be of interest to multiple banks, multiple institutions, multiple firms. And just because we have the blockchain nature that maybe some people are not so familiar with, it's always, you want to encourage people to actually explore the opportunities. What does that mean? And actually, not only from a business perspective, but from a career perspective as well, because it is just such an exciting and kind of, it's evolving all the time, kind of industry to operate right within. And so, yeah, I would think, it's just, people just need to recognise, I think, the importance of having those transferable skills, and that actually working for a technology firm isn't just about technology development. It's about the bigger picture. It's a business that wants to grow, that's got aspirations, and being part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very much agree with all of you. So I think if we wanted to just kind of wrap up, or just, say one final thing, like if you had one wish, what would that be? Who wants to start?
Yep, I can follow on from what I just said, if you like. I think just for women perhaps not to underestimate themselves, to recognise the transferable skills, and just to not to be put off potentially by something that seemingly seems to be overly complex to you if you're not experienced in that field, if you're not an expert in technology. I mean, it can be daunting. And I think perhaps just to have that confidence, just to look beyond the kind of blockchain technology piece and to explore opportunities with confidence.
Thank you. Yeah.
I really want to just endorse what you just said, Claire. But if I was going to wish for something as a follow-on from that, is I'd love to see scholarships for women, and women going into cryptography and some of the more advanced quantitative areas, where I think we could see some people really shine. and if they could be encouraged even in the more advanced areas as well, so that we can see them developing and becoming leaders in areas where we have either academics or other company executives positions that they can take up. I think it's very important.
Yes, I very much agree. So as a mentor to a few of some institutions, some universities, I very much agree with that. So I work with the Frankfurt School of Finance, their blockchain center, and they have a fantastic new program, DLT Talents, and they're running it all on volunteer basis. There's no funding provided for that. So, you know, they have found a bunch of mentors. Actually, this program is only for women. So they are volunteering, all these people are volunteering their time to bring more people, more women on board to make them, you know, understand the technology. And really, they have developed this fantastic 18-week-long program, which is, for example, just one example of where, you know, financing from either from the commission or from, you know, from the German government or some other public funding would be really beneficial. So they can expand and make these kinds of programs more sustainable. So I very much agree with that. Anka, if you had one wish.
Sure, I'm gonna start by just giving a shout out to another mentorship program that I'm familiar with, is She 256 out of Berkeley. They also have this fantastic mentorship, yearly mentorship program based on, you know, volunteers. They recruit women from different areas of blockchain technology. Some are technical, some are not. Some is business development, some is being a product manager, some is, you know, UX, UI designers, all of that. And so far, they've done a fantastic job promoting women and getting them interested in the field and just familiar and comfortable. My one wish, you know, I think I'm going to build a little bit to what Christine said. And my wish is not that everyone understands blockchain technology. My wish is that we don't need to know what blockchain technology is, because it's going to be running seamlessly in the background. And we're not going to need to know how our money is being transferred cross borders. We're not going to need to know that, you know, the digital identity system that we're using necessarily lives on blockchain. We're just gonna, the use cases would be so well implemented that that we're not gonna need to know that. And the only way to reach that is by getting more women in, because what I'd love is for women to realize that blockchain is so new that we almost don't have to play catch up in this industry, because everything is still being developed. We're talking about, you know, women playing catch up in finance and a lot of other fields, but this is so nascent that we can shape it from the get-go in a way that, you know, 10 years from now, we're not going to be talking about how do we fix the gender gap in blockchain, but rather it'll be one of those sort of ethically and gender balanced born industries. That's my wish.
That's fantastic. Christine.
That is an amazing wish. That was so well said. I'm going to bring it down a bit. I don't want to be negative, but I want to see less crypto bros. I want to see more women in leadership positions. I want to see more support of women by male leaders in blockchain companies. And I also, there's a lot of money being made, a lot of token sales, a lot of ICOs, IPOs, and all these fun acronyms. I'm not seeing some of that money go back into developing the next generation of blockchain builders. And there needs to be the Black women who code, girls who code, these programs teaching the coding languages that underlie blockchain, and that, and also just general awareness that, you know, like we've talked about, you don't necessarily need to code, but there are roles for you. Because just like any technology, it is shaped by the people who build it. And if they all look the same, then that technology is not going to be as impactful as it could be. So I'd like to see some of that money going back into more philanthropy around women and underrepresented populations in this space. That's my wish.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be super fantastic as well. Very much agree. Susan, what would be your wish?
I think building a little bit on Anka's and Christine's comments, I mean, and speaking, this was my perspective in the US, I think we could do a better job in universities and professional schools to, articulate or get out there that there are many companies and apart from the big players, and that they do a lot of different and cool things. And you don't necessarily have to go with the huge behemoth to get a great and diverse experience. And I think that feeds a little bit into some of the mentorship programs that we're talking about. So it's not just getting women the skills when they're coming out of school, but also explaining to them that there is a really broad and diverse set of opportunities that are out there, and they are all worth exploring. I think that is also a way to help build up the next generation of women leaders.
Yes, very well said. Yes. So yeah, I'm so happy that you all of you, found the time to participate in this today. And what I would wish is actually that we have more of these webinars, not only in March when, we have International Women's Day, but that we get together and continue this kind of discussion and encourage, each other and help each other to get involved, to find new opportunities, to find new perspectives, to be curious and open-minded, because I think all of these, new opportunities will be here for us and will really help us improve our futures. Not just technologically, but really with some technology that we can use. So something that's translated in something usable, that you don't have to talk about the technical parts of it, but you will just, be using it without even knowing how it works. So ladies, thank you so much for being here today. We're just going to continue this discussion. This is, the first time we're here this year, but everybody, you will see us again. We're also starting we will be joining the Clubhouse, and we'll be having informal discussions and chat. So for more information, and hopefully we'll see you all, or we'll hear from you very soon. So thank you all again. Thank you so much. And we'll speak very soon. And with everybody else, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Maria. Bye-bye.